Okay, so I get cut off right at the very end of part 1, but basically in this video we are just going to kind of go over what you can start to do, with the readings that you get here, and how you can start to design your building if you haven't started designing already, or in your guys' cases, since most of you already have basic designs and layouts that you had to have for the midterm. You can start to justify what you've done or help improve your designs with maybe shading devices or anything like that. And then also, if there's time, I'll start to go over the floor, or if not, how to run the solar analysis for each floor and interpret that data. If not, obviously that will be in the part 3. I only get 15 minutes per video since it's the free version of the software, so that's why I get cut off sometimes. So if this is my building. Obviously this was just a quick building I did, just to start to show some readings. But say this is my building, and whatever type it is, and you start to look at your readings. So with the roof itself, you start to see that the roof has very high readings, and is going to have probably the most solar radiation on it, obviously since it's the roof. So for that, you can start to say, well, maybe I'm going to paint the roof a lighter material, so more of the solar radiation is reflected off of it back into the atmosphere. That's why the majority of the roofs in Miami painted white, because it has better solar reflective properties than a dark black roof. Other thing you can do is you can have a green roof. So now the vegetation up there absorbs the solar radiation and uses it in its photosynthesis process. Not to get too scientific with you. Other thing you can do is you could always worst case scenario is if you can't do any of those, or if you've done them and you want to do more, is you can build up your roof with different materials for the actual construction portion of it, where you can add insulation or different types of layer to your roof and just the overall construction of it. So the same thing goes for walls. So when you're looking at your if you kind of start to rotate around your building, you notice, as I mentioned in the last video, the north side is your coolest. So if possible in any design, the north side would be the best side to put a nice big glass wall, especially if there's views. And I think in this case, I think the lake is right there, I believe, or kind of like depending on how your building's oriented, it's either like north or the northeast side. So with that view, or you can probably at least see across from the north side on our project. But if you put a big glass wall there, it's going to be the least amount of direct sunlight, so you won't have to worry about shading devices and trying to keep the sun out, because it's already going to be a somewhat cool wall. So that's why if you can, you try to put your glass feature wall on the north side, since there's less solar radiation on it and less direct sunlight. For your other walls, and then the same goes for the east and west facades. Since those are the second least, for solar radiation amount. Obviously, there's still a good amount, but it's not as bad as the south side. Those could be your second kind of areas to put big glass walls, where you won't have to put as much shading devices. Or maybe not as high. You could probably get away with maybe going halfway up on a shading device and the rest, or depending on how your layouts are. And then with your south side, obviously, if that's where glass is going to be, no matter what, that lets you know that, okay, I'm getting some pretty high readings here. There's going to be definitely some solar radiation there. I should start to think about shading devices. If there's going to be a glass wall there, or a curtain wall, or any type of window, even if there's some windows going on. And then obviously the last thing, and it goes, as I was mentioning for the roof, you can do the same thing for the wall, where last case scenario, you can take your wall and you can start to build it up with different layers for the actual construction of the wall, where you can add different layers of insulation, different materials. So as I mentioned, maybe your facade is the exterior facade is brick. Then maybe you have an air gap, then some insulation, then some metal studs with some insulation in them as well. And there's many different ways you can actually build up a wall, and you can look through building construction books and they have it laid out. And so basically, what that does is it increases your R value, and the higher your R value is for basically a wall or a roof, the better that they'll either, in Miami, the better they'll keep heat from getting in, and also it works in the reverse where if your space is conditioned, it stops air from going out. So it kind of works as a barrier where it keeps the cool air in, keeps the hot air out. So that's kind of like a general sense of how you can start to read this, and you can start to look around. Obviously, I know most of you guys already have your projects laid out, so obviously you can't start looking from here where, if this was a generic mass, you can start to look at different faces and say, okay, the north face is cool. It'd be a good spot to put some, a nice glass featured wall, or, just curtain wall in general. And, then, I gotta do something with the south facade if I have to put glass there. It'd be nice to have some shading devices on it, etc. So and then, obviously at the stage that you guys are now, you can start to test your buildings and what you have. So, if you didn't realize it, that one of your facades has a good amount of solarization on it and there's glass, maybe you start to put some shading devices on it if you already haven't thought about it, or if you have, this is a good way to prove why you're putting the shading device on it, so you can show in pinup or anything like that. Okay, so this is the model of my building. This facade's getting a lot of solarization, so that's why there's a shading device on it for the curtain wall. So there's always it's always you want to try to prove on why you're doing something, so that that works for that. And then, or if you have something going on with your roof, maybe you have a double roof, or I know there's some groups that have the actual roof, and then they have kind of like a architectural roof that maybe slopes up or does some different stuff to it, or acts as a canopy to help shade the roof, and then that this becomes your explanation of why you did that. Beyond just the fit with the concept, it also helps with the mitigation of solar radiation within actual surfaces of the building. So I think that's pretty much it, just to kind of gauge what you can do. Now I'm going to start to talk about how you can start to test the floor. Different floor levels. So right now, I'm just going to show you my first floor. I have nothing in it. I just have a box right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a solar analysis for just the floor. And I'm going to get 0 reading because I have no glass. And then I'll pick this, select nothing, and this is going to be tricky because you're going to have to try to find your actual floors. So you can see here, mine's actually coming to the edge of the building, so it's easy for me to select. But I know some of you have it where you don't see the floor on the outside, especially when you have floors, on level 2 or 3. So you kind of just got to do the best you can. If there's glass, and I'll show you when I start to put glass in the building, where you can actually start to see a little bit better and select it. So I'm going to select, and also if you click in it, like if you have some stuff selected, if you just click outside, it deselects everything, and then you can select the inside. And I'm going to hit finish, and then I'm going to analyze. And I'll get a 0 reading since there's no direct sunlight. And the one thing that you're going to want to do is the way that you're going to be able to see the actual floors themselves is with the building section. So you'll be able to cut a section. But you'll notice if I tried to cut a building section now, my reading would disappear and I wouldn't see it. It's right there. So what you have to do is you actually have to exit out of this, and now the results become a permanent kind of entity in the view. So when I take my 3D section now, I will see, when I cut it, I will see what the results are. And you can see it's red because it goes from 0 to 0, so that's why it's still reading as red. It still sees it as the max, but that's why it's 0 to 0. But now, if I add, say I want to add a curtain wall on the south side, since that's where you're going to see it, I'm just going to add a little one. And I'm going to bring it down just to start with. So say it's just like a little tiny. I'm going to delete what I had. This one. So now, and this is a good note to give you guys. So you see how I have the section. I have the section and it's cut, and then you might be inclined to just rerun the solar analysis right now to kind of test what this new window is going to do, how that's going to behave. But unfortunately, Revit doesn't take into account that there's more building up here. So it's going to run this as thinking that this is all open and there's no roof. So unfortunately, what you have to do is you have to reset the building section either by pulling it up, or you can, if it's pulled down, to quickly reset it, you can just come back to the view and uncheck the section box and it resets the view. So now, if I go back to the Analyze tab and I run the solar analysis and pick the floor, again, I can select easier since obviously since it's on the edge. But if you come in and you have different floors, when you start to look through the glass, you'll be able to tab. So you can see how I was able to tab until I saw the actual floor itself. And then I can select it. So that's how you can start to kind of pick different floors of your building. And then hit finish. I analyze this. And this is where I can show you how the analysis is going to start to disappear. So you can see it's giving me a reading now because there's glass coming through. Because of the glass, there's solar radiation coming in. So that amount of the floor is being directly, is going to have direct sunlight on it, as an amount average hour. So on an average hour throughout the year, that amount of the floor with this height of glass will have that amount of solar radiation on it. And we can zoom out to see the legend to see what those numbers actually are. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to leave this open. I want to turn on the section box, and you see how it disappeared. And I'm going to run it again just to show you. So now if I try to cut a section, that reading is going to disappear. See how it kind of takes away from what you want to do. But if I reset and run this one last time, and then close this out, like I said, it makes this as like a final entity. So when I cut my section, it's there, and now I can go to a top view, and you get to start to see your floor plan. And in part 3, I'm actually going to start to build up my floor plans and with different levels, and just start to do some quick analysis for that to see the different things. And what you can do here is you can go to the view, you can rename it, say Solar 1, and then if you hit this kind of house icon, it recreates a new default 3D view. So you can now create. So say this was a solar analysis for level 1. You can do this as a solar analysis for level 2, and they're two completely different entities. So this one will always be there for that view, and then you can do a new one there. But going back to this one, I want to play around with this a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete the reading I just did. But before I do that, I'm actually running out of time, almost near my 15-minute mark. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to stop here, and I'm just going to pick up on in the next video.